Mr. Daniel Best, Director of Projects Department at the Caribbean Development Bank. Mr. Miguel Almeida, Head of the Private Sector, also at the Caribbean Development Bank. Dr. Damie Sinanan, Manager for Competitiveness and Export Promotion at the Caribbean Export Development Agency. Staff of the Caribbean Development Bank, and also staff of Caribbean Export. Invited guests, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen, good morning and a very warm welcome to this highly anticipated launch of the Technical Assistance Programme, which is being funded by the Caribbean Development Bank in collaboration with the European Union and is implemented by the Caribbean Export Development Agency. My name is Joellen Larrier. I am the Senior Advisor for Communications at Caribbean Export, and I will be your host for this morning's programme. Now, I believe we had quite a huge amount of people that have registered for this event, something like 900 people. Looking forward to learn more about this technical assistance programme and how they can leverage this opportunity. So I will be brief, and I would like to invite, we will hear from Dr. Damie Sinanan on behalf of our Executive Director, Deodat Maharaj, who unfortunately could not be with us this morning. Followed by Dr. Sinanan, we will hear from Mr. Miguel Almeida, and then we will go back to Dr. Damie Sinanan, who will give an overview of the programme itself. At the end, we will hear a featured address from Mr. Daniel Best, from the Director of the Projects Department at Caribbean Development Bank. And so without further ado, I believe it's probably right for me to just get started. And I'd like to invite Dr. Damie Sinanan to give his welcome remarks on behalf of Deodat Maharaj, our Executive Director for Caribbean Export Development Agency. Over to you, Damie.
Very much, Joellen, and good morning to everyone. On behalf of our Executive Director, Mr. Deodat Maharaj, I would like to give his regrets for not being able to be here this morning, but he sends along his good wishes and wishes everyone a safe and productive day. Mr. Daniel Best, Director of the Projects Department, Caribbean Development Bank. Mr. Miguel Almeida, Head of Private Sector, Caribbean Development Bank. Staff of the Caribbean Development Bank and Caribbean Export. Invited guests, members of the media. Thank you all very much for being here this morning. And welcome to the launch of the Technical Assistance Programme. Just a bit of background about Caribbean Export Development Agency. For those who don't know, Caribbean Export Development Agency is a regional trade and investment promotion organization of the Forum of Caribbean Group of the Africa, Caribbean, and Pacific states. Caribbean Export, it's our mandate to build the competitiveness of the regional private sector and also to attract foreign direct investment into the Caribbean region. And we do this through the generous financing of the European Union via the 11th European Development Fund, EDF, under which the agency is responsible for implementing the Regional Private Sector Development Program. The overall objective of the 11th EDF, Regional Private Sector Development Program, is to increase employment creation, inclusiveness, particularly for youth and women and indigenous groups, as well as poverty reduction in the CARIFORUM states, to targeted interventions that provide new and innovative frameworks for growth and development. We do this primarily through training and capacity building, export development and promotion, investment promotion, focusing on services development, and what is most relevant for this morning's proceedings, provision of access to finance for small and medium-sized enterprises. Now, over the presentations this morning, we're going to hear a lot about the coronavirus pandemic and how it has impacted upon the Caribbean region. So I'll just cover this very briefly, but I know we will get into it into more detail as some of the other speakers will address it. But the economic crisis generated by the coronavirus pandemic is having, of course, a major impact of countries in the Caribbean region. The IMF estimates that the global economy shrunk by 4.4% in 2020, which is some of the worst growth rates since the Great Depression of the 1930s. In the Caribbean, it's even more dismal. Latest statistical models estimate that the region may lose between 6.3 and 14.4% of GDP over the period 2019 to 2021 relative to baseline projections. And most importantly, debt levels are likely to worsen because of the coronavirus outbreak. And this is already a major issue for the Caribbean region. Essentially, the pandemic has accentuated the challenges confronted by the region and has called for the challenges and the vulnerabilities confronted by the region, and has called for new initiatives to tackle these long-standing issues. With these in mind, Caribbean Export recognizes that it's no longer business as usual for us, and these unprecedented times call for unprecedented measures. We, as a developmental agency, have to think outside the box and have to come with new and innovative solutions to help the private sector in the Caribbean region. At this time, we're in the process of finalizing our new strategic plan to cover the period 2021 to 2024. And we're focusing very heavily on a transformational agenda, which will lead to real growth, job creation, and poverty reduction in the Caribbean region. We're proposing to focus on 3 strategic pillars, including export development and promotion to increase private sector competitiveness, strengthening regional investment promotion in key sectors with a focus on climate change action, innovation, and transformation, as well as targeting support to the services sector as the next frontier in CARIFORUM trade and investment. Having conducted a survey in 2020 to understand the current and expected impact of the pandemic on SMEs across the region, Caribbean Export, in collaboration with our colleagues at the CDB, recognized that our combined support during and after the pandemic would be essential to improving the competitiveness of SMEs going forward, assisting them to restore their sales and competitiveness to pre-pandemic levels. We also want to ensure that our efforts promote the achievement of the SDGs agreed by all states in the international community, particularly SDG 5, 7, 8, and 10, which relate to gender equality, affordable and clean energy, decent work, and economic growth and reduction of inequalities. Therefore, bearing all this in mind, Caribbean Export and CDB have partnered to develop this technical assistance program to provide access to finance opportunities as well as targeted technical assistance support to firms across the region. Access to finance and a readily supply of financing has been identified as one of the key determinants to growth and development of SMEs and will enable them, including women and youth-owned SMEs, to remain operational and to rebound in the medium and long term to pre-pandemic levels. Likewise, providing capacity building to SMEs in areas such as market intelligence and digitalization of business will support their export development and assist them to increase exports in the Caribbean region as well as international markets. Caribbean Export has a long history of implementing a grant program. For example, under the 11th EDF to date, we have awarded approximately 4.8 million euros in grant funding to over 170 SMEs across the CARIFORUM region. Approximately 55% of these beneficiaries are women-owned enterprise. And this year, under the Technical Assistance Program, the agency plans to specifically target women and youth-owned enterprises to continue, as well as continue support the uptake of energy efficiency, renewable energy, digitalization of business. And when I get to my second presentation, I will go into more details on what we're providing support for. We're very pleased to partner with the CDB in this area. You know, we consider partnerships to be a very important part of our work plan going forward. And we hope that this technical assistance program is but just one more step in a long line of collaboration between Caribbean Export and the CDB. So with all of that being said, I would like to thank once again the CDB and the European Union on behalf of Mr. Deodat Maraj on partnering with us on this technical assistance program. And we know it will bring tremendous support for the SMEs and the private sector in the Caribbean region. We look forward to this future partnership and we will definitely work hard to achieve the objectives of the program. Thank you very much, and I'll turn it back over to you, Joellen.
Thank you very much, Damie. Much appreciated for obviously delivering those remarks on behalf of our Executive Director. I'd like to move straight ahead into our next speaker, and I'd love to introduce Mr. Miguel Almeida. He's the Head of Private Sector at the Caribbean Development Bank. Mr. Almeida, please, welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Dami Sinanan, for your words. Mr. Deodat Mahara, Executive Director of the Caribbean Export Development Agency. Mr. Daniel Best, Director of Projects Department at the CDB. Ms. Lisa Harding, Coordinator of MSME Development. Mr. Samani Moody, Operations Officer at MSME, and other colleagues from CDB, our virtual audience, members of the media. Good morning. I want to begin my remarks by welcoming our micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises, or MSMEs as we know them, that have decided to participate in this launch today. Your presence here not only signals your desire to actively seek the support you need to help your businesses, but it also validates the work that we do. Additionally, I want to thank both Caribbean Export and CDB's MSME teams for their continued effort to advocate on behalf of MSMEs across the Caribbean and for their dedicated work over the last few months to make this project a reality. It is my hope that this project provides a blueprint for future work between both agencies. I want to spend a few minutes speaking about CDB's private sector development program. While support for MSMEs has been a critical aspect of CDB's programming ever since its inception, the bank has recently undertaken a number of structural changes to become more responsive and to assume an expanded role in the Caribbean private sector, including the recent creation of the Private Sector Division, or PSD, and indeed my appointment as head of this division just about 3 months ago. In this regard, our focus will be to, first, contribute in improving private sector development and competitiveness. 2, participate in the overall enhancement of enabling environment for the private sector. 3, to increase access to finance and promote greater financial inclusion among MSMEs. 4, to close social and productive infrastructure gaps utilizing public-private partnerships. 5, to help narrow gender and generational access to finance disparities. And 6, to alleviate the harmful impacts of climate change and natural disasters on the private sector. Despite the efforts by CDB and our partners, we recognize that there is still a large unfinished agenda. MSME policy and regulatory frameworks do remain weak. Access to finance remains a binding constraint, especially those that are youth and women-owned. The capacity of MSMEs still reflect technical gaps with continuing need to support formalization and adoption of new technology and innovative processes, including business continuity planning. It is our belief that the bank's MSME program is especially positioned to close these gaps by focusing on de-risking MSMEs through a multi-pronged, multi-partner approach, incorporating both loans and grants which focus on innovation, scalability, and replication of best practices. In this regard, a partnership such as this with Caribbean Export is a natural and logical fit, given that both organizations are committed to private sector development and increasing the competitiveness of regional MSMEs. This project will benefit from Caribbean Export's administration of this grant program through an established architecture that has a proven track record over the last 12 years in the direct assistance grant scheme. In closing, I would like to reconfirm the bank's intention to continue supporting regional private sector development through timely interventions and strategic partnerships to ensure more efficient, effective, and responsive program implementation. Thank you very much for this opportunity and have a good morning.
Thank you very much, Mr. Almeida. as an agency, obviously it's very important for us to have these partnerships, and I just want to reiterate what Dami mentioned earlier on. The partnership with CDB does mean a lot to us. I think it's a very important partnership for the region as a whole, and I think from everybody at Caribbean Export, we really are looking forward to this program, and obviously the whole program in terms of the learning aspect of it as well. And we will have a lot of information as it relates to the program on our website, carib-export.com. So if you haven't already visited it, please do so. But I know you're all keen to hear more about the program itself and the details within it. So I will hand it over to Dami Sinanan, our Manager for Competitiveness and Export Promotion, who manages this program as a whole, along with the other members of his team. Dami.
Thank you very much, Joellen. I'll just confirm if you can see my screen, Joe. Great, no problem. All right, good morning again everyone. All protocols once again observed. I will just deliver a brief presentation about the technical assistance program that we are executing in collaboration with CDB as well as the European Union on the 11th EDF. Now, the CDB CE Technical Assistance Program has two major components: the Technical Assistance Grant Facility, as well as development of e-learning modules for private sector to assist their capacity building on a larger scale. Now, I know everyone is primarily interested in the grant facility, so I'll spend a little more time on the grant facility this morning, but I will also speak a bit about the e-learning modules, about what you can expect over the long term as it pertains to the digitalization of e-learning content for the private sector. So the Technical Assistance Program Grant Facility is jointly funded by, of course, the Caribbean Development Bank and also the European Union through the 11th EDF, and it's implemented by Caribbean Export Development Agency. As I mentioned, we have a long history in terms of administrating and deploying grant facilities across the region. The objective of the TAP grants is to provide direct support for the region's SMEs on a non-reimbursable basis. So whereas previous grant facilities done by Caribbean Export would have been done on a reimbursable basis, in the sense that companies that have received grants would have had to spend the funds up front and then apply for reimbursement, we recognize that the pandemic has sort of made cash flow an issue, especially among small and medium-sized enterprises. SMEs can no longer afford to put out money up front and wait for reimbursement from Caribbean Export. So therefore, we have transformed into a new modality whereby we are providing the funding up front. So SMEs can have access to those funds to build their export capacity. It will also provide support to facilitate activities focused on business continuity. We recognize that business continuity is a major issue as we see in the pandemic. And we will also use it to facilitate the increase of exports within the Caribbean and also to international markets. Finally, the objective of the TAP is to capitalize on the benefits of bilateral or multinational trading arrangements within the region or with ACP or EU partners. We have the CARIFORUM EU EPA, we have now the UK EPA that has been signed. And there are many benefits for exporters under these trade agreements, which is our hope that the TAP will provide the framework and the capacity so that businesses can take advantage of the opportunities under these trade arrangements. So in terms of eligibility, to be eligible for a grant under the TAP, applicants must be a sole proprietorship, partnership, or limited liability company within the Caribbean region. And I'll speak about the countries that are eligible to apply in a moment. They must be operating and trading for at least 2 years, supported by the last 2 years' financial statements. And when we say financial statements, we mean income statements and balance sheets, and also the previous year's bank statements. Companies must be legally registered and operating in one of the following CDB Caribbean Export member states. And these are the states listed here. Essentially, it's the 14 CARICOM member states. Unfortunately, entities who are not eligible to apply are business support organizations, educational institutes such as universities, schools, vocational centers, non-governmental organizations included but not limited to human rights organizations, social clubs, associations, charities, And unfortunately, if a firm has received the grant under the 11th EDF previously, including our 2018, 2019, and 2020 calls, you are unfortunately not eligible to receive grant funding under this particular program. Eligible projects include resource efficiency and renewable energy, so the adoption of a renewable energy into your business, digitalization of your business, marketing and promotion strategies, building resilience, purchasing of capital, purchasing and upgrade of capital goods, but with a caveat that the purchase and upgrade of capital goods must not exceed 30% of the total grant amount. Certification to international standards such as food safety standards, HACCP, FSMA, and the like. Capacity building and training, as well as protection of intellectual property rights. The minimum grant amount that you can apply for is $5,000 US, and the maximum grant amount, $15,000 US. How do you apply? The grants have essentially been launched today, so you can access application forms and the budget templates from Caribbean Export's websites, www.carib-export.com. Please note, this is the only source for application forms. If you have in your possession previous application forms from previous grant facilities, that unfortunately does not apply. We encourage everyone to log on to our website to access the current and most recent application forms. Any other variations to the application forms will be declared null and void. The deadline for submissions is July 9, 2020 at 4:30 p.m. Barbados time. And we ask that all applications be received within Caribbean Export by that time. The application process requires the submission of hard copy documents. So please, if you are considering applying, please take into account the time it will take to transit from your country of origin to Barbados by that particular deadline. Now, we are cognizant that the COVID-19 pandemic has made couriering documents and and submission of stuff via the post office a bit difficult. Please note, we will take that into consideration when we have the deadline. We will look at the current situation of the pandemic and we will be flexible as necessary. The evaluation process following receipt of applications, we will be evaluated using a committee of independent evaluators using an evaluation grid, and the evaluation grid will be available on our website. So you will be able to see what we're focusing on when we are looking at the grants. The assessment of each application is based on the scores obtained under each section of the evaluation grade, and the final score is an arithmetic average of the scores given by each independent evaluator. So we will rest assured the process is very transparent and very robust, so that we are confident that we're giving the best and most worthy applications grant funding. In order to understand, I mean, we have limited time this morning, but in order to understand the nuances of the grant and how to write proper proposals, we have two upcoming grant workshops. First will be on June the 8th at 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. And you can look out for the links on Caribbean Export's website. The second will be on June the 10th from 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. We will also record these sessions and have them available at all times during our social media. And if applicants have any questions, they can be directed to tapinfo@carib-export.com. This email inbox is constantly being monitored, and we will be available to answer any questions 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, so that you can get the information necessary so you can apply for a grant. But I encourage everyone to attend the grant workshops, ask any questions that you have so that you can understand what it takes to apply for the grant. The second part of the TAP program is the development of knowledge-based products for an e-learning for Caribbean Export's e-learning platform. You know, we recognize that capacity building has been changed significantly during the COVID-19 pandemic. Unfortunately, over the last year and a half, we are unable to have in-person training programs where we can bring everyone to one location. And while that may return to normal over time, we recognize that we have to look at new ways of making sure our training program reaches our constituencies. So this part of the project is focused on the digitalization of Caribbean Export training programs, as well as the development of new modules of training programs and the retraining and recertification of facilitators to deliver course content using this new modality of delivering training programs. The courses that will be digitalized, these are the courses that we have. I'm not going to go through all of them one by one, but we can see that they are here. And I think this presentation will be made available following this launch. And in addition, we will look at digitizing some existing materials within Caribbean Export, including our services Go Global training modules, intellectual property protection, our business of music, achieving success at trade shows, market intelligence, as well as understanding trade agreements. So with that being said, I would like to thank you all very much for my program, for listening to my presentation. If you have any questions about anything, you can feel free to direct it at tapinfo@carib-export.com. We will be happy to answer any questions that you may have. And again, please take note of the upcoming grants workshops that we have so that you can get all the necessary information that you need. So I'd like to turn it back over to Joellen, and thank you all once again for listening to me this morning.
Thank you very much, Damien. I think that was quite insightful, and I believe everybody's going to be quite excited to be able to apply for a grant. I think obviously there's a lot of eligibility criteria and information to take on board, so I would certainly encourage those that are interested in applying to join one of the workshops that are coming up on June the 8th, I think it was, you said. It was the first one, and I think it was the 10th or 12th.
June 10th, June.
June the 10th as well. So please do register for one of those workshops, the details of which will be on our website, where you will be able to register. And also, obviously, all of the supporting documentations will be, I believe it should already be live on our website as it relates to the actual grants and the grant process with all the guidelines. So we are honoured to have with us this morning Mr. Daniel Best, who's the Director of the Projects Department at the Caribbean Development Bank. And he will give his featured address to us this morning. So I'd like to give a warm welcome to Mr. Daniel Best.
Thank you so much, Joelle. And I'd like to recognize all of the protocols previously observed. I want to bring greetings on behalf of the President and other members of the management team at the Caribbean Development Bank. Let me begin by placing on record sincere thanks to Mr. Deodat Maraj, the Executive Director of Caribbean Export, Dr. Demi Sinanan, not just for his excellent presentation just now, but also for the work that he has put into this thus far. And to my CDB team, Ms. Lisa Harden, the coordinator of our MSME development team, and Mr. Zamani Moody, our operations officer, for their commitment to strengthening the strategic relationship between Caribbean Export and CDB, and their invaluable contribution to the conceptualization and now launch of this very important project, support for exporting or export-ready micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises affected by the coronavirus. This launch is a perfect opportunity for us as stakeholders to recommit our willingness to work collectively to achieve a strategic and effective way forward as the region continues to battle the economic and social fallout resulting from the coronavirus pandemic. The COVID-19 pandemic has caused both a global health emergency and economic slowdown. Trade, investment, and employment have all been negatively affected, which is expected to have a severe adverse impact on the achievement of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs, as they're more commonly referred to. The International Monetary Fund, in its World Economic Outlook in January of this year, estimated that the global economy would contract by 3.5% in 2020, while recovery of 6% is projected for 2021. Furthermore, in March 2021, the World Trade Organization estimated a 5.3% decline in the volume of world merchandise trade for 2020, followed by an 8% rise in 2021, continuing its rebound from the pandemic-induced disruption in normal economic activity. No country or region has been spared the ravages of the spread of COVID-19, either economically or health-wise. ever since the first case was announced on March 10th, 2020 in Jamaica. CDB's board member countries have reported a steady increase in cases and sadly deaths. The needed containment measures, coupled with the global economic downturn, have stalled economic activity in the short term and caused a decline in the fiscal and external positions of our board member countries, with knock-on effects on businesses and livelihoods. The decline in tourist arrivals resulted in an immediate reduction in revenue, and measures adopted to stop the surge of COVID-19 have led to business closures, especially in the hospitality sector. According to the Caribbean Tourism Organization, tourist arrivals to the region in 2020 fell by 65% when compared to tourist visits in 2019. The sudden shutdown in tourism has stunted economic activity in the Caribbean, given the heavy reliance of several BMCs on economic activity in this sector. Consequently, the region's gross domestic product contracted by 7.2% in 2020, which is likely to exacerbate inequality and poverty. However, the region is projected to experience a partial recovery in 2021 and grow by 3.4%. On average, MSMEs contribute 50% of GDP and create 45% of the jobs in our region. The negative impact of the pandemic on the MSME sector has also resulted from shrinking of formal and informal income earning opportunities, especially among women and low-income groups. This has created a challenge for governments, households, and individuals. In this regard, there has been a concerted effort by CDB and other members of the donor community to quantify the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on MSMEs in the region to inform a more strategic and measured response to the pandemic. Consequently, in April 2020, CDB, in partnership with Caribbean Export, designed and launched 2 surveys which targeted both MSMEs and business support organizations, or BSOs. The surveys sought to collect important data on the impact of COVID-19 on MSMEs and to inform future MSME programming for both agencies. 520 firms responded, and the results showed that, firstly, the main operational areas affected by the pandemic included cash flow sales operations, future contracts, and staffing. Secondly, over 49% of firms had to close physical locations. 45% have halted production of some goods and services, and 47% temporarily ceased operations altogether. Thirdly, approximately 88% of surveyed MSMEs had no contingency plan. And finally, over 75% of firms indicated that grant funding would be the most useful intervention, with 98% of firms requesting support in the form of technical assistance and capacity building. The surveys were conducted in the early stages of the pandemic, and as such, the results reflect a scenario before the full economic impact of the pandemic was felt by businesses. Furthermore, between August and September 2020, feedback received from informal consultations with BSOs and other BMCs confirmed the urgent need for technical assistance and capacity building programs to help businesses survive, remain competitive, and regain market share in export and domestic markets. In response to the pandemic, CDB has launched several measures to help its board member countries to mitigate the impacts of the pandemic and to support economic recovery, some of which have been designed to promote the recovery of the MSME sector. The Caribbean Technological Consultancy Services Network, based right here at CDB, has been identified as the bank's primary vehicle for providing technical guidance to the MSME sector. The CTCS network sought to engage with and directly support MSMEs through convening of a 3-part webinar series held between June 4th and June 18th, 2020. The webinars, which were intended to assist MSMEs to cope with the challenges of COVID-19, focused on pivoting your business to survive, money management and managing your relationship with your financial institution, and cost-effective marketing and client engagement. Additionally, the board of directors of CDB in July 2020 approved a variation of the terms and conditions of a loan agreement between CDB, the government of Belize, and the Development Finance Corporation in Belize. This allowed the institution to utilize a portion of the bank's lines of credit to provide working capital support to existing enterprises for other than longer-term inventory investments, up to a limit of $250,000. Similar loan agreements were approved between CDB and the government of Grenada and the Grenada Development Bank, as well as the Development Finance Limited in Trinidad and Tobago. Furthermore, the bank secured a US $50 million line of credit from the Inter-American Development Bank, a portion of which may be used by MSMEs in eligible OECS countries to fund working capital. Which brings us to this project and the reason we're all here today. The bank has approved US $600,000 to assist in financing the second call of the COVID-19 Recovery Response Direct Support Grants Program, or DSGP, for MSMEs in 14 of CDB's board member countries. This project aims to improve the resilience of exporting and export-ready MSMEs to external shocks by increasing their operational and technical capacity. In this regard, MSMEs participating in this program will improve their chances of survival and recovery post-COVID-19. It is important to note that this project is aligned with CDB's strategic objectives of building economic resilience and its corporate priorities of promoting private sector operations, MSME development and competitiveness within priority sectors and subsectors in our board member countries. Also, in alignment with the Sustainable Development Goals, this project will focus on promoting inclusive and sustainable industrialization and fostering innovation. In the bank's strategic plan for the period 2020 to 2024, we note that the MSME sector is a critical area of focus in our region's ongoing efforts to achieve sustainable and inclusive economic growth and eliminate abject poverty and inequality. Our intention, therefore, is to continue to craft programs of support that are available and accessible to our BMCs. Areas of support under the bank's MSME development program will focus on three main areas: capacity building, access to finance, and improving the business climate. In this regard, the bank, in partnership with Caribbean Export Development Agency, is officially launching this COVID-19 MSME Response Grant Program to support businesses impacted by the coronavirus pandemic. In closing, I want to congratulate the team from CDB and Caribbean Export for their continued advocacy on behalf of the private sector across the region and their support to MSME development and export promotion. I encourage the teams to remain steadfast in your commitment to this very important sector, to regional growth and poverty reduction. I implore you to continue to play a leadership role in elevating the region's private sector through your work. I wish to re-emphasize the current business environment's fluidity, which is becoming increasingly complex because of weak global growth and the current health pandemic. In this regard, CDB remains committed to supporting the development of MSMEs, improving the business climate across the Caribbean, and giving high priority to financing and promoting initiatives that enhance competitiveness. We are also relying on institutions like Caribbean Export to help us design programs that are better targeted for MSME development and drive economic growth and employment creation in the Caribbean. The good people of our region deserve no less. Ladies and gentlemen, Madam Chair, I thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Best. I think, we have kind of gone over our time, allotted time this morning, but I would like to obviously thank you for the inspiration that you've given us this morning. I believe that, there's a wealth of information there that was delivered. And also, you know, for those firms that have been hit by COVID-19, you know, this is a really important project for the region as a whole, and you know, for them to be able to leverage this opportunity and the funds that the Caribbean Development Bank have obviously allocated and put forward to really support the recovery. So we really do appreciate your commitment and your team's commitment and your organization's commitment to the region as a whole. Now, as I say, there were a few questions that have come through on the chat, but we have run out of time. And so we do ask that if you do have any questions, please do email us at the email address, which I believe Damie put up earlier, which was tapinfo@carib-export.com. That's tapinfo@carib-export.com. And we will, of course, obviously respond to all of your queries as they come through. Those, you know, that email box is monitored all of the time. And now all of the information is available for you as it relates to the grant program on our website. So please do visit it, carib-export.com/tap grants. Those of you that are on our mailing list, you will get that automatic notification come through to your email. But if you're not on our mailing list, do please go to our website. So once again, I would really like to thank our speakers today, Mr. Miguel Almeida from Caribbean Development Bank, Dr. Damie Sinanan. Thank you for presenting the program on behalf of the teams that have been working on this from both Caribbean Export and the Caribbean Development Bank. Mr. Daniel Best, once again, thank you very much indeed. And with that, I would like to obviously officially bring this morning to a close. And I wish all of you great success in achieving the grants as they become available. So thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Thank you too.
Thank you.